really wonderful to get applause before you speak. Why? Because before I say anything, you're clapping. So thank you for that vote of confidence. And so it is good to be here. It's great to have this opportunity to chat with you about the Glenmary Home Missioners. And I know I'm speaking with folks who know and love our unique and crucial ministry. I know that, okay? I know I'm speaking with folks who share our passion. Appreciate that. I know that. I know I'm speaking with co-missioners. I know I'm speaking with people who love us very much. And whenever one is given the opportunity to speak publicly, especially in kind of a captive crowd like this, I mean, you could leave, and that would be certainly acceptable. But whenever one has the opportunity to talk in this context, it's an honor. And it's an honor that anyone in this chapel is capable of doing and doing well. We acknowledge the power of a story. You bring your special stories. You bring your memories with you today, and it's going to be shared by others, and we reverence that. And perhaps you recall the story of Brother Jason Wildenkamp, who spoke here last year, or the story of Father Vic Supp, who spoke with us in 2016, or perhaps you remember Brother David Henley, who spoke with us in 2015. And we share our stories not to draw attention to ourselves, although it might seem like that at times. We don't draw attention to ourselves so much, but we want to give you, our president's friends, we want to give you the inside track. We want to give you the behind-the-scenes look at Glenmary that hopefully you find educational. When you walk out of here, I hope that you walk out thinking, well, I didn't know that. I had no idea that the development department did that. If you walk out of that, here with that, those questions answered, that would be a good thing. So the power of the story is how we learn. It's not that my story is any better than your story. It's not that my memories are any better than your memories. It's not from a position of one over and above. It's clearly from a posture of one with. It's from a position of extreme gratitude to folks who believe in us and love us and love how we conduct our unique and crucial ministry. The title of my presentation today is, But How Can Fundraising Be a Ministry? How can fundraising possibly be a ministry? Does anyone enjoy asking for money? Raise your hand. Susan, don't let me down. Raise your hand. Oh. Let the record show 2, okay? I want that in the archives. I want that in the minutes of this church that 2 people enjoy fundraising, asking people for money. Okay, well that's good to know. And Henry Nouwen, great Dutch theologian who you read lots of times, Henry Nouwen in a book, Spirituality of Fundraising, and that book's going to be my Christmas gift to the staff. Susan, act surprised, okay? That's going to be my Christmas gift. But in Henry Nouwen's book, The Spirituality of Fundraising, he writes, I begin with the notion of fundraising as a necessary but unpleasant activity. Necessary, unpleasant. That's why nobody raised their hands. I totally get that. And then Henry Nouwen goes on to demonstrate, as he puts it so well, we must not let ourselves be tricked into thinking that fundraising is only a secular activity. Fundraising is first and foremost a form of ministry. I love that. Fundraising is as spiritual as giving a sermon, entering a time of prayer, visiting the sick, or feeding the hungry. But how can fundraising possibly be a ministry? And the follow-up question, how can one possibly have passion for doing that? The answer to these questions and lots more is precisely what you're going to take home with you, the power of a story. To arrive at this answer, we need some prerequisites. I have a plan. My plan is to talk about my vocation story. Everybody loves vocation stories. Besides that, I can do that. I won't spend too much time. I'm going to talk about some significant events in my 24 years of priesthood in the missions. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about our assignment process and how it came to pass that I became the director of development. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And we need these things to frame the story. The power of a story never survives in a vacuum. It needs to have a history. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the slow evolution of how I came to believe in the reality that fundraising is, in fact, a ministry. And hopefully you'll find out a little bit more about what our development department does. So that's where this train's going to go for the next few minutes, or maybe several minutes. If I go too long, just throw some stuff at me and I'll quit. If I don't go long enough, I'm going to ask you to ask questions. So I grew up on a farm. Arguably, I stayed there longer than any of my siblings. And it's significant to the extent that I loved it. I learned to be a self-starter, in addition to growing award-winning tomatoes, right? I can give you the secrets if you want that. On the downside, I had to milk cows every morning and evening, so I couldn't get involved in sports or debates at school. My undergrad degree was in political science. Priesthood was not a remote consideration. Political science majors in 1975, and I talked to my advisor, we're putting on aluminum siding. Sounded like too much work to me. So a lot of my friends were going to law school. I entertained that. I actually did well in the LSAT, the admissions test to law school. And then I got to thinking, I don't really want to go to school for another 3 years. So at that point, if you can imagine, in the 70s, I decided I would find myself. That was in vogue in the 70s. A lot of Harry Chapin music is based on that. I finally found myself. So I was going on this mission to find myself, and I did. So I joined Vista, volunteer in service to America years ago, when Vista was really Vista. Made $136 every 2 weeks. I was on food stamps, lived in a subsidized apartment complex. Sounds like a good way to find yourself to me. I loved it. I mean, I was on fire in those days. My commitment to Vista was only a year. I extended it to 18 months. I had Messiah wings at the time, flopping around, and sometimes those Messiah wings were clipped, and other times they realized came to fruition. But I was in fire. The important things for our purposes, I picked up some skills in terms of poverty relief. I picked up some skills that I bring to the table even now in terms of relationship building. During these years became apparent that I was running from my vocation. So one day I called the vocation director for the Diocese of Rockford, Illinois, my home parish, and I said, I'm ready. I was never recruited. I just told him that I was ready. 2 months later, I was studying for the priesthood for the Diocese of Rockford. And then I learned about the Glenmary Home Missioners, and the rest is history. After my second year of theology, I found that which I was waiting for my home life. It was a hand-in-glove fit. I finally found it. The moral of the story and what you take home with you today is precisely this. One always wants to run to something that you have passion for. You never want to run from something. You always want to run to something you have passion for. So I know this because I had 7 years between college and seminary. I know this. Glenmary was a hand-in-glove fit for me. Here's a group that works in rural areas. I have tons of experience in that. Check. Here's a group that ministers in very poor areas. I have passion for this. I have expertise that I bring to the table for this. Check. Here's an area, a group that works in areas where one needs to be a self-starter. Check. I can do that. I have passion for that. Here's a group that ministers in areas where initiative is expected. Check. Here's a group that ministers in a context where responsibility comes early. Bring it on. Check. Here's a group that ministers in areas where frequently one is removed from central administration. Check. So I have such passion and love for Glenmary and our unique and crucial ministry. A few stories now. For my 24 years in the missions, I promise I won't keep you there 24 years, I promise that. I was ordained in 1988. I was a little older than my peers because I had 7 years between college and seminary. Immediately after I was ordained, and something that touches my heart still, I was appointed as the administrator of 3 counties in Georgia. So I was never an associate. I was never an assistant pastor. Immediately upon ordination, I had 3 counties in Georgia by myself. I was on fire. This is the honeymoon period, okay? I was sent there with a mandate to start a Catholic church in Dodge County. If you look on this map and you find Georgia, at that time there was 55 counties in Georgia without a Catholic church. Today that number stands at 52. There's still a lot of ministry left to do. But I had a mandate to start a Catholic church in Dodge County. And it was wonderful. And the details to that are probably less important than the reality it happened. There were meetings at the Chamber of Commerce. I went around and had weekday masses in people's homes. Did a lot of work on the radio and paper at the time. That's not important. What is important is history was made on December 3rd, 1989, when for the very first time on a Sunday, Holy Mass was celebrated in Dodge County, Georgia. That's what's important. The people were on fire. I had 17 people in RCIA getting caught up in the faith, and I had spouses, and I had children. The folks were on fire. It was just a wonderful time. And just remember that the surface of life is always happening. The depth of life happens only when you remember. After that, we did 8 years in West Virginia. I was the only Glenmarian at that time in the state of West Virginia. Had 3 little counties. Calhoun County was one of mine. We met in the basement of a house for Holy Mass. Had a seating capacity of about 28 or 30 people. On a good weekend, we might get 20, 24 parishioners. Sometimes it was 6 or 8. Unemployment rate in Calhoun County when I was there was 24.3%. In the basement of a house. But this, again, it fed my passion. I love the Appalachian culture. I love the people there. In Spencer, where I lived, we completed a $250,000 renovation project because we didn't have adequate seating room in the church in Spencer. I had a student at the time who was an architect that helped us with that. We did a lot of ecumenical things. We played softball. Those details aren't important. The important thing is history was made. And you can look over here. This is something I ask archives to do. And you look at all the counties and places that Glenmary gave back to the pastoral care of the diocese. Okay? Dodge County, check. Wirt County, West Virginia, check. Roane County, West Virginia, check. Calhoun County, check. All these missions Glenmary gave back to the pastoral care of the diocese. That's what we celebrate. That's what we celebrate. After that, I did a short 5-6 years in Mississippi. The hallmark there, I'm not going to speak much about Mississippi, is for the very first time I celebrated Mass in Spanish regularly. I'm not the brightest star in the tree, particularly when it comes to languages. But you know there is a God, and you know in the reality of the Holy Spirit, the first time you go out there and people respond, you know, they respond in Spanish. Gave those places back to the pastoral care of the diocese. Look at Union County, Mississippi, we gave it back. Look at Pontotoc County, Mississippi, we gave it back. We celebrate that, okay? Next little jaunt was Arkansas and Oklahoma. So for 7 years, I had 3 missions. I had 2 states, 2 dioceses, 2 central administrations, 2 bishops, and no staff. So for 7 years, I lived in Boonville, Arkansas. I had a mission in Radcliffe, Arkansas, and a third one across the state line in Heavener, Oklahoma, some 60 miles one way from Boonville. Had 324,000 miles on my Glenmary car, 1997 5-speed forest green Toyota. I loved it. And so it's a kind of thing that you celebrate, and looking back on it, you know, all those god-awful roads. The people in Heavener, Oklahoma made their living gutting and cutting up chickens for very little money, okay? Sometimes the situations would be so bad, so sad, you'd come back home, you wouldn't get back from your rounds until 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, okay? It didn't take too long for our little church in Boonville to expand. And so we were blessed, and when I was there, we started a building fund. I left the next priest a little over $380,000 in plans that were approved by the diocese. The reason that Boonville grew so fast is because of our youth group. Look at your own churches. Most of the time it's a real struggle to get youth to participate in church. In South Logan County, in Boonville, Arkansas, we had tons of youth. Wednesday nights, sleepy little town, Boonville, Arkansas, we would get between 65 and 70 people for Mass on a Wednesday night. Are you kidding? Most of those folks were youth. We won the award for the best youth group in the Diocese of Little Rock 2 years in a row. So after that, we did, I don't want you to think that everything was wonderful, okay? I hate that when people do that. There's challenges in your lives. There's crosses in your lives. I didn't talk about it, but I'm going to now. A lot of challenges. For example, when I was in Boonville, 35-year-old man, father of 2 darling young girls, committed suicide on New Year's Eve. I was called about 2 o'clock in the morning and dealt with that. When I was in Boonville, a 17-year-old young man who was a star on the football team died instantly in a lawnmower accident. The police pulled up to my house. I had to deal with that. At those times, you pray the second joyful mystery of the Rosary, and you pray that the Holy Spirit inspire your words when you go to these places to minister. There were so many people at that 17-year-old's funeral. We had it at Subiaco Abbey. There was 450 people at the funeral. So when you prepare that homily, you pray, God, inspire my words. So it wasn't always exciting, good things. In Heavener, Oklahoma, the same thing. We had frequently pigeons that flew around in that little storefront church. We had 6 5-gallon buckets. We knew exactly where to put them to catch the rain. So it wasn't all bed and roses. What I'm saying is our life is not like all that different from yours. We had a schism in Heavener, Oklahoma. It seems that the diocese hired this individual and had a lot of followers. Okay. And it took away from the people that came to our Mass. They even set up their own worship service. And as God is my witness, they need to make a movie of this. As God is my witness, I went over there one time and the door was nailed shut. The door was nailed shut on this mission church. So I'm reminded of 1 Corinthians 1:10. Some were following Apollos, some were following Cephas, some were following Paul, but all needed to follow Christ. So out of those ashes, I'm pleased to say, the church came back stronger and better. The bishop, Slattery, who I love, came to sleepy little Heavener, Oklahoma, and there was reconciliations, there were tears. That church came back stronger, but don't think it's all good news. It's not. It's challenging news. There's times when I prepared for a meeting and nobody came. There's times when I messed up. There's times when I wish I would have did things different. It's a lot like your life. It's a lot like your life. The reality is that we believe in our loving God and Holy Spirit to help us. A little bit now about the Glenmary assignment process. As you know, I know I'm speaking to the choir, Glenmary guys take 4 vows: poverty, celibacy, obedience, and we kick it up a notch, right? Unlike a lot of groups. We kick it up a notch, we take a vow of prayer. Under the vow of obedience, we believe in collegiality, which means let's talk about it. And I remember Father Dan Dorsey, is he here? I don't think he is. He's coming. He's coming later. Father Dan Dorsey was my novitiate director almost 100 years ago. Father Dan Dorsey looked us, young, idealistic, novices, right? Dan is a great novice director, and I was fortunate to have him. He looked us in the eye and he said, gentlemen, under the vow of obedience, you need to take your turn. You need to be in part of the support staff, whether it's development, whether it's administration, whether it's vocation or senior member liaison or whatever. You need to take your turn with that. And he said it's crucial That was Father Don's favorite word, crucial. I can't begin to tell you, I thought everything in the world was crucial. Crucial this, crucial that. Well, so I get it. I mean, I totally get it. And there was a need for me to take my turn after 24 years in the missions. I totally understand that. So without fanfare, 6-7 years ago, I became director of development. The questions to be answered. So I recount some memories now where this train's going to go. The challenges and the good news is, how can fundraising possibly be a ministry? I learned early on that I would be humbled by the witness and generosity of our donors. I knew that. I knew that very, very early on. Father Henry Nouwen, in his book, Spirituality of Fundraising, again suggests, fundraising is precisely the opposite of begging. Did you hear that? It's the opposite of begging. When we seek to raise funds, we're not saying, please, could you help me? It's really tough out there and it's really hard. Can you help me? No, we don't say that. We don't say that at all. Rather, we are declaring out loud, standing straight up in front of God and everybody, what we're declaring is, you know what? We have a vision that's amazing and exciting. And we are inviting you to invest yourself through your resources that God has given you, your energy, your prayers, and your money in the work to which God has called us. Our invitation is clear. Our invitation is confident, okay? So I have this in my room, the little plaque here, a cheap plaque. We go before God to be judged, and God will ask us, where are your wounds? And we'll say, got none. I have no wounds. And God will ask, was nothing worth fighting for? Really? Was nothing worth fighting for, honestly? The Glenmary Home Missioners believe the best gift we have is the precious gift of our Catholic faith. We're willing to be wounded for that. We're willing to fight for that. The Glenmary Home Missioners and you presidents, friends, folks, believe that what we do is amazing and it's exciting, and we're willing to fight for that, and we're willing to be wounded for that. And that's going to make all the difference in the world. It's going to make all the difference in the world. I love Pope quotes. Pope Francis is so quotable. Pope Francis recently said, we cannot keep ourselves shut up in our parishes, in our communities, when so many people are waiting for the Gospels. You can't keep yourself shut up in your parishes, in your communities, when so many folks are thirsting for the Gospel. So Glenmary, as you know, functions as a corrective to the notion that all missions are foreign. Frequently, when we hear that, we think they are. We stand as a corrective to that right here in the States. What we're about is the reality that our faith, participation in Holy Mass is a privilege. It's not a convenience, okay? It's a privilege. I learned early on, what got you to today isn't going to get you where you need to be tomorrow. I learned that early and often in this department. So we reverence and try to enhance donor relationships and donor loyalty because each donor is crucial. And we do this in a lot of ways. We do this by a lot of personalization. In my department and our staff, I open all the white mail. Translation is mail that does not come in an official Glenmary envelope. And I personalize every one of those. And I've become familiar, more or less, on some level, with donors all over the country. So I found out that my mission is not one county or two or three, but our people are all over the country, and they love us, and they give from their want in many cases. They have hurts, and they suffer a lot. Get a lot of prayer requests, I do. What do you think the number one prayer request that I get in my office, what do you think the number one prayer request would be?
Good health.
Good health. Excellent.
My children have left the church.
Excellent. Very good. Dave's number one. Yours is number two. Very good. Spot on. Father Don, pray for me. My children left the church and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Number one request. Number two, health. My child has cancer pray for me. My marriage is failing. Pray for me because I feel so alone now that my spouse has died. Pray for me because I lost my job. This will be my last donation. Pray for me because I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. Last week, reality right here, okay? Last week I got this along with a donation, and I quote here. Dear Father Don, this is our last contribution. My wife died last year, and I'm dying now. Use these funds wherever they are most needed. How would you handle that? So when I wrote this individual from Arizona, you don't know him, I enclosed this card, which says, you know, you are in our prayers. I didn't know how to handle that. I tried to the best of my ability to write something comforting and profound and thank them. So I have in my office, if you've ever been there, it's very messy, but I know where everything is. That's always important. As you suggested, Rita, health issues, clearly everything, and I enclose this holy card. I have stacks, we'll go through thousands of these, and in the back is a prayer for healing. For those that lost loved ones in mourning, I have stacks of these. It's a prayer of remembrance for our loved ones, and I routinely go through a lot of these. I go through a lot of these. So where are we going to go from here? I think, you know, we take these prayer requests at Glenmary very seriously. We're always people of integrity. If we don't have our integrity, we have nothing. Why? Because we take a vow of poverty. What gets us up in the morning is our integrity. So I have this other placard also in my room. It's kind of yellow. It's been around forever. I have this in my library upstairs. 5 words. Have you prayed about it? Have you prayed about it? In Glenmary, we take prayers for our donors very, very seriously. I do, I know all the guys do, frequently have mass for our donors, remembered in the petitions, but even in the quiet of our nights. You know, why do you do what you do? You know, you think about, what difference did you make today? Sometimes it's hard to discern analytically, but it's sure not hard to figure out on a spiritual level. When we pray for our donors, we're people of integrity, we are, and we do that routinely. Try this sometime. I encourage you, take this home with you. It's a tip you're going to get. We all know people in our lives that whine and complain. Years ago on Saturday Night Live, the whiners, and, you know, the drama people. We all know people in our lives that complain. I want you to look them in the eye the next time that happens. And I want you to ask them these 5 words. Have you prayed about it? Try that at a cocktail party. Try that at a golf party. Try that at your work. And see where that conversation goes. When somebody complains and whines, I need you to look them in the eye, and I need you to ask them, have you prayed about it? See where that conversation goes. And I do that. Frequently that conversation dies. They don't want to go there. They don't want to go there at all. Or kick it up a notch and say, you know, let's pray about this together. See where that conversation goes. I encourage you to do that. So fundraising is a ministry on a grand scale. We try to increase our donor base in a day and time when most all nonprofits, including Glenmary, are experiencing decline in their number of donors. Glenmary is the best kept secret in the Catholic Church. Specifically, we try to increase our donor base. We try to get the word out about Glenmary by at least 8 specific methods. I'll go quick because I think I'm talking too long. 8 specific methods. So we try to increase our donor base and get the word out about Glenmary by appeals. Glenmary does about 70 appeals all over the country as you look on this map. We're invited in by dioceses to speak on behalf of Glenmary. It's educational. We become the recipients of prayer, and we make some money on appeals. A lot of dioceses nowadays do not allow us to use envelopes. So years ago, it was a way to pick up donors. Still is, to some extent, not at the level it was. I could talk your ear off about stories. I've been all over the country. You know, I'm a farm boy. I never thought, years ago, remember that advertisement from the Army, you know, join the Army and see the world? Well, join Glenmary and see the world. I've been all over the country, okay? Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would travel this far. I've been to Colorado in the west and Florida in the east, just with appeals alone, not counting donor visits. One time in Colorado, this couple took me out to eat, and as God is my witness, the waitress was carrying a sidearm. She was carrying a weapon. And I'm like, really? So I had my picture made with that waitress and a big pistol here, you know. So you never know what you're going to find. You never know what you're going to find. But here I am, this sheltered farm boy, you know, going all over the world. And good experiences. And guys are so good, Glenmary guys, to help us with appeals. We try to increase our donor base and get the word out about Glenmary by the radio. Last year, Glenmarians were on the radio a lot, okay? I was on the radio recently in Alexandria, Louisiana, Ave Maria radio that went to 7 other states. We were on the radio in Indianapolis, Indiana, Toledo, Ohio, Baltimore, Maryland, Poughkeepsie, New York, Cleveland, Ohio, College Station, Texas, Sandusky, Ohio, and locally on Sacred Heart Radio, where the 6 o'clock a.m. hour is broadcast nationally. Sometimes we buy advertisements, but a lot of times it's real Glenmarians doing interviews. Father Chet just completed one recently in the station in Toledo. Try to get the word out. Why? Because we're the best kept secret in the church. People need to know about us. We try to increase our donor base and get the word out about Glenmary by staffing booths at conventions. This last year, for example, Glenmary had booths at the following events: the National Council of Catholic Educators, downtown Duke Energy Center, 9,000 plus people there. Rachel had a booth there, banners giving out information about Glenmary. We're at the Columbus Men's Conference, 3,000 in attendance. We're at the Cincinnati Men's Club at the Taft Theater downtown, about 1,500. We're at the Ohio State Knights of Columbus Convention, maybe about 2,000 people there. And what happens there is people don't know about Glenmary. You don't pick up a lot of new donors, but a few. The good news is we're recipients of prayer. The good news is it's an education reality. And the people love knowing about us. They're so surprised. We try to increase our donor board base and get the word out about Glenmary by providing educational mission speakers at schools across the country. When you have time today, talk to Rachel and she'll tell you about all the places that she's been. We try to increase our donor base and get the word out about Glenmary by participating in community activities. Most recently, the Flying Pig, which the Flying Pig is a marathon. For those of you not familiar, pleased to say there's well over 300 teams in the division of co-ed, and we won that. So we have representatives from Kenya, Argentina, Philippines, and the United States, and we won that. Great publicity, great press. A lot of people got to know about us. We try to increase our donor base and get the word out about Glenmary by providing sacramental ministry at parishes in the area. Locally, gradually, folks come to know about us. So networking, we call that. You know, I love to fill in. It's important for me who I am to keep one foot in pastoral ministry. So frequently, I'm helping out one place or another. I'm rarely here on weekends or during the week for that matter. And what happens is those people come to know about Glenmary and Glenmarians. And not only that, it also functions as a fundraiser because, as you know, we take a vow of poverty. We're not allowed to keep our stipends. But, you know, guys are contributing. I know last fiscal year I contributed about $6,000 to Glenmarian stipends because unlike the diocesan clergy, we cannot keep that, okay? We try to increase our donor base and get the word out about Glenmary by purchasing acquisition or names. Let the record show Glenmary never has nor will we ever sell anybody's names. We never do that. Somebody's selling my name. I don't know who, but based on the appeals I'm getting in the mail, somebody somewhere is selling my name. Frequently we would buy 150,000 or 200,000 names and send them all over the country. The return rate is not good. I'm being perfectly honest and making myself vulnerable with you president's friends. Return rate's about 0.03%, less than 0.5%. But sometimes there's so many diamonds in the rough. Susan, our director of planned giving, brings stories all the time about how somebody learned about us in acquisition and went on to remember us with huge gifts and remember us in terms of their bequest. I write personal notes on all those acquisitions. And I write thank you millions of times. So I apologize to you. Sometimes it's really hard to think of something new. So if I ever repeat myself, let me apologize for that. I got certain sound bites that I really like, and I use them probably too much. We try to increase our donor base and get the word out about Glenmary by advertising in national publication. In recent years, we advertised in St. Anthony Messenger, U.S. Catholic, Catholic Digest, Catholic Telegraph, and Priest Magazine. Here's a August 2018 Priest Magazine. We had a wonderful ad in here. It only has a circulation about 4,000, so not too many. But we had an insert complete with an envelope, and the insert highlights our maps, which are really big hits. And as an occupation, the most generous occupation we have across the United States is priest. Very, very generous. So we wanted to do that. Change gears a little bit. Let the record show that sometimes we are the recipients of thank yous. Okay? Most recently, in our raffle, the top prize winner, $5,000, was won by somebody in South Carolina who was displaced by Hurricane Florence. What are the odds?
Wow.
What are the odds? Profuse thank you. This individual was forced out of his home, completely gutted, nothing left, no memories, lives in government housing. His home won't be ready for at least 6 months. He won first prize. He said, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, and so how great is that? Sometimes we're the recipients of thank yous just in terms of what they saw in the Challenge magazine, or the population that loves us the best are those that are recipients of our pastoral care. Population that loves us the most are those that came to the Catholic Church by virtue of our missions. So, as you figured out by now, fundraising ministry is about priority of relationships. Donor visits, another way to enhance relationships. My buddy Susan, our planned giving director, who's worked so hard and so successfully to ensure Glenmary has a future bright with promise. She just personally saw about 1,700 donors face to face, over coffee, over breakfast, over lunch. It's a lot of donors to see personally. I'm a slacker by comparison, okay? But one thing is certain, there's no substitute for personal visits in terms of enhancing loyalty, in terms of enhancing relationships. We tried, I wish we could do more of that, but we flat out don't have that big a staff. On a humorous note, I visited a donor one time, this is Susan's favorite story. I visited a donor, you know where I'm going with this, in northern Wisconsin, just a little, she's laughing, a little south of Green Bay. And so I pulled up at the appointed hour, and nobody's there. But this is the thing. The mailbox was overflowing. I mean, look in the picture window. The plants are dead. The plants had been dead for a long time. I didn't know what to do. What would you do? I called the cops. I called the police. And the police came over because I was worried about this guy. Turns out that's his living style. He was fine. I didn't win any friends that day. Calling the cops on him, but I was really worried about him. And so there you go. It happens. It's not always a success story. Another way we enhance.
Father Don, can I interrupt?
Sure, please.
I had to call this man, and I said, Ray, I said, I introduced myself, and I said, I understand that Father Don went to see you recently, and dead silence. And then he goes, oh yeah. That was it.
Sometimes the sometimes you lose, sometimes you get rained out. I went a long ways out of my way to see him, and I never did. So it's a lot like y'all's life. It's not all success stories, right? It's not all. So we try to enhance loyalty and relationships also by mission trips. I spoke with some folks earlier, and they said it was a life-changing event, and it is. Most recently, Rachel on our staff just came back from a mission trip. A friend of mine, Deacon Matt Skinner, said, looked me in the eye and he said, you know what, Don, it's a life-changing experience. And Deacon Matt preached on his experience of visiting Appalachia at all his masses last week, which I celebrated. And it was wonderful, a life-changing experience. He said, he shared with the people, he said, I know what Glenmary does, he said, but when Father Don invited me and I went on this mission, before it was my head, now I know what you guys really do, a life-changing experience. Okay, so I would encourage you to get with Rachel if you haven't. I know a lot of you have been on mission trips already. I would encourage that. We try to enhance our relationship with donors by anticipating their needs. An example of this, I'm very proud of our staff. I need to say that more often. We have very good morale. We have wonderful staff. We try to enhance our relationships by anticipating their need. An example is Hurricane Florence. So in advance, ahead of this storm, we sent out this email, beautiful email, prayer that Rachel wrote to all of our donors in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. The prayer is, Lord, you calmed the stormy sea. You multiplied food for crowds. You gave sight to the blind and restored hearing to the deaf. You defeated death. Lord, be with our brothers and sisters as Hurricane Florence nears. Lead them to safety. Protect our home from the rain. Be their shelter. Quiet their fears. Lord, knower of all things, give us all your eternal peace. Amen. So we sent this to donors in advance of the storm. Anybody we have an email address with, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. So it's all about relationships. You know that. The National Catholic Development Conference, we call that in the business, we call that NCDC, wrote recently a tremendous mission statement. Early and often, I copied this mission statement, and when a new staff person comes, that's the first thing I give them, because I love this mission statement. This mission statement says, our donors never cease to amaze and astound us with their generosity. We ask people to give because someone at some time in our life asked us to give. We ask people to give because we are convinced our mission is worth that support. We help our donors fulfill the deepest desires of the heart to love God and neighbor as oneself. Our ministry is first and foremost about relationships. Ministry and relation to be and build communities of faith, hope, and love. So thanks for putting the needs of the poor and neglected missions of our nations above your own agenda. I know you get lots of requests. I know you do. Thanks for loving us. You never cease to amaze and astound us with your generosity. Thanks for your shared passion, and thanks for being our co-missioners. As you probably heard, we have some good news to share. And I like to look at this, think of this as the fruit of your shared labor. That's what I'm talking about. It is the fruit of your shared labor. History will be made tomorrow, Saturday, October 6th. Did you realize that? History will be made. Why? Because for the very first time, Glenmary Expansion will assume pastoral ministry of Martin County, North Carolina, tomorrow. You heard it first here, okay? For most of its history, Martin County was served by visiting priests, but tomorrow, Martin County and the county seat of Williamson will have a resident pastor minister to function as a base to share the best gift we have, to share the precious gift of our Catholic Church. Expansion of Glenmary was made possible by the recovery of Father John Brown from cancer. He recovered here. He's amazing, amazing. And it's just so grateful to be back in the mission so we could make that expansion. In terms of the fruit of your shared labor, 2 young men who were ordained deacons in July will be ordained Glenmary mission priest on April 27th. Come and join us, April 27th. They'll be ordained mission priest. 2 young priests when we need them the most, okay? In terms of the fruit of your shared labor, pleased to share that 4 of our missions in Tennessee have completed or soon will complete constructions of humble, permanent church structures. This is awesome because what happens? What happens when a church gets to that level of development that they can build something permanent? Well, I'll tell you what happens. That community grows. Why? Because they have a structure that's permanent. It tends to grow fast. So in Lafayette, Maynardville, Irwin, and Rutledge, there are various stages. The community of St. Michael the Archangel in Irwin dedicated their structure Saturday. Father Chet and others were there. The bishop had a surprise for the people. The bishop there shared with the people that community of faith is getting elevated from a mission to a parish. According to canon law, it's a big deal. I wish you could have been there. People were beaming. They were so proud, they worked so hard. The people, it's going to make all the difference in the world. And what happens when communities grow? We can give them back to the pastoral care of the diocese, take on some new territory. So in terms of the fruit of your shared labor, 12 young men are in formation studying to be Glenmary priests and brothers. You know how huge that is? There's dioceses that would love to have those numbers. Glenmary is so blessed. What I need you to hear is you folks who share the fruit of your labors. These success stories are your success stories. In terms of the fruits of your shared labor, you empower us to embrace a future that's so bright with promise. You really do. I mean, let's face it, without you, we couldn't do anything, right? You empower us to embrace a future bright with promise. So the ministry of fundraising is proclaiming what we believe in such a way that we offer people an opportunity to participate in our vision and mission. So the answer to the rhetorical question is a resounding yes with pride. Absolutely. Absolutely, fundraising is a ministry. It's an awesome ministry, and it's a ministry that I have a lot of passion for. So thanks for believing in us and supporting us. Thanks for your shared passion, and thanks for loving us in our ministry. As you know by now, it is a ministry, and speaking for myself and our staff, we have a lot of passion for what we do. But thanks for being our partners, and thanks for making this possible.